Today's video is sponsored by ZocDoc. It's a free app and website where you can choose from among 100,000 healthcare professionals here in the U.S. And yes, they do take insurance. Now, many of you have indicated a need for medical attention for a wide variety of mood disorders or family practice issues and much more beyond that. So with ZocDoc, you can find medical assistance and check actual appointment times and receive professional care. As the need arises, go to the link that we have below the video here and then proceed with confidence. Hello, Team Healthy. Glad to be with you on another episode of Unbound. These are the episodes where I'm fielding questions and comments from you, and then I put them in a category here so that I can lump some of them together and make some comments in ways that I might not otherwise be inclined to do in some of the other videos. Today we're going to be talking about the topic of scapegoating. How many of you have felt like the narcissist simply refuses to take responsibility for their flaws or their mistakes, but instead they try to find someone, usually it's going to be you, to place their burdens onto and say, if there's a problem here, it has to be you. That's what we're talking about when we talk about scapegoating. Now, I've got actually 4 different questions and comments here, so we have quite a bit to cover here today. The first person who writes in about this just simply says, Dr. C, could you talk about truth tellers and their designation as the scapegoat? Okay, right there, when we say truth tellers, if you're a truth teller, you have a problem. Not with yourself, but you have a problem when you're dealing with that strongly narcissistic person. Let's keep in mind that narcissistic individuals began at a very early age thinking being open and being honest is not going to get me very far. Because if I do, I'm going to be clobbered, I'm going to get in trouble. And so these individuals, very early on, have thrown up very strong walls of defensiveness. And when someone comes along and says, we need to talk truth, there's a problem here, there's a difficulty here, you're already stepping all over the narcissist game plan, because their game plan is, no, I have to present myself as somebody who's, above and beyond all of that. And so you're already at odds with the narcissist when you say there's a difficulty here. For example, let's say they're screaming and yelling at you. And then you come back and you say, you know what, this isn't working for me. We've got a problem and we need to talk about it. Now, it seems pretty cut and dried when you're doing that. And yet the narcissist, despite how glaringly obvious their flaws and their mistakes are, they can't say, you know what, I really did blow it, didn't I? Narcissists are committed to a false self. And so many times what they'll do is they'll deny the severity of what they've done. Okay, if I have had a problem, then let me explain to you what's going on. And so they're constantly in spin cycling. They're trying to come up with explanations that take any kind of focus off of their problems and putting it elsewhere. So that's the beginning point. And so can you talk about truth tellers and their designation as scapegoat? You're already in an adversarial enemy kind of a mindset as opposed to somebody who's collaborating. One of the healthy things that we can say is that let's suppose that I've made a mistake. And if a friend of mine comes along and says, hey, Les, I didn't like the way you handled that, the healthy person, I hope that's what I would say, well, what are you picking up on that I'm not? And then when they say, well, you did A instead of B, and I was kind of disappointed with this, that, and the other, well, that might sting a little bit if I have to receive that. But you know what? I'm flawed. I'm not perfect in every single circumstance. And so if I'm going to move forward with healthiness, I'm going to say, well, I'd like to know more. Let's talk and let's put it out on the table and let's see if we can get a good way of working through this. That's what healthy people would do. The narcissist is like, okay, if you're coming at me and saying there's a problem, rule number 1 is it can't be me. And so they look for someone else, and well, you're in the room, so it's going to be you. So that's their beginning point, living with the false self fully intact and fully in charge. Now, let's take a look at some ways that this can play out. Another person writes in and says, one of the most narcissistic phrases I've ever had said to me was, "See what you made me do." Now, that is classic in terms of the narcissist and their false self, and then therefore their scapegoating. This is gaslighting. Let's suppose they have had a problem, and their number one response is, "Well, somebody needs to be to blame here, and since it can't be me, it is you." And I want you to understand, when they go into that space, that's verbal abuse. What they're doing is they're calling your good character into focus, and they're saying your character is no good. And then what they're also saying is, "I require you to carry my shame." That's the classic definition of scapegoating. And so what this tells us is the psychological currency of the narcissist is shame and judgment. Narcissists have learned to think in terms of being punished or being wrong and all, and as a result, they don't have that ability to think objectively. They think subjectively, knowing, well, someone's going to be judged here, and I don't want to be the one who's on the low end of that. And so when there's a problem, it's like, well, look at what you made me do. So even if they do something wrong, it's like, well, it can't possibly be me. This speaks of a very strong, fragile ego. Let's take a look at another illustration. This person writes in and says, "Can a narcissist be nice to family members but mean toward others?" And then in parentheses, for example, co-workers and subordinates. The answer is yes. My former boss, notice former, it's like I had to move on, I'm guessing, seemed nice to his family. He was gentle and soft-spoken and nice toward other employees who would always do as he says. Unfortunately, to those who did not always agree with his opinions, he tried to find ways to badmouth us and create reasons to fire us. He made our work unnecessarily and extremely difficult. And when confronted, he preached about forgiveness. We're going to get to that in just a minute. That makes me roll my eyes. Well, when you give this kind of double explanation, it calls his niceness into question. You're saying, well, there are times when he can appear nice. I guess maybe his family members would show up at a social function or maybe come in for lunch or who knows what, and he can put on a show of niceness and pleasantness. And then if he's got his people that are yes people and just do everything he says, he can be nice. But you see, my huge thought is you can tell most about a person's character, not when everything is going swimmingly well, but you can tell most about a person's character when there's conflict. And in the midst of conflict, what this person says is he has to badmouth us and create reasons to fire us. And so, again, we go back and say healthy individuals, in this case, in a work setting, would say, okay, we have a problem. Clearly, you have some thoughts that are not the same as mine. Let's talk. And it doesn't mean if you're that person who's in the decision-making position, doesn't mean you have to just collapse and do everything that all your subordinates tell you. But it does mean that you're willing to listen because you might learn something. Narcissists are such know-it-alls most of the time that they think, I don't need to learn anything. You need to just take your cues from me. And so in the moments of crisis, that's when you're going to see the fullness of a person's maturity or lack of. Now, when this person says, when confronted, he preaches about forgiveness, there's a term that we use. It's called virtue signaling, where there are, and this is the consummate gaslighting, and this is where a person more or less implies, you know, I'm probably one of the best and cleanest people you've ever met. And so if you come against me, you're coming against somebody who's just, squeaky clean. And besides, it sounds to me like you're holding a grudge. And so they project all sorts of, negative characteristics into you. You need to forgive me. And it's their way of letting you know you're so in the wrong. And I'm going to preach to you now and tell you how you need to live your life. And this speaks to their need to have the one up versus one down kind of a mindset. That's how it works, and that's why they seek the scapegoat, because they always have to be in the one up position. And then a final question we have here. This person says, how aware are they that they are distorting the truth? Well, to you or to me, when we watch that narcissist who's obviously self-serving, they have entitlement, they have emotional disarray, and they come out in ways that are treating other individuals in a very poor kind of way. Just plain simple honesty says this is problematic. But the fact that narcissists continue on in all of this tells me that their rationalization is so tight and their ability to justify their own decency at your expense is so deeply entrenched that the awareness factor is not there at all. Now, there is an awareness that there's a problem that the narcissist can see, but because they're so inclined to say, but it can't be me, I have to stay in the power position, then it inhibits them from having any kind of hard objectivity. So we go back to that first question, can you talk about truth tellers and their designation as scapegoat? Unfortunately, the narcissist is so predisposed towards not examining themselves in any kind of honest and analytical way, that when you come along and say there's some truth that we need to examine here, truth to them is whatever they feel in the moment or whatever their craving is in the moment, and so they don't have an objective understanding of truth. Factor that in and know that it's not going to be pretty for you, and unless they have a real huge change of heart, this is what you're dealing with. And like this person who says, my former boss, it's like you may need to just get away if you're going to have any kind of ongoing desires to have goodness in the relationship, because it's not going to come from them in a very high percentage of the case. So I'm hoping when you see this, you can remind yourself, I deserve better, and I don't need to be the recipient of someone else's harshness and someone else's blame and shame, when in fact they're the ones who are generating the issue. Now, this gives you some good awareness and insight about what you're dealing with. And if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, please do so, and we'll keep more videos coming towards you. Now, you do know that I have sponsors that help out with our programming, and I choose the sponsors that I have so that because it's based on what I believe is helpfulness to you. And one of our sponsors is ZocDoc. It's an online resource for medical attention, and so there are times if you have family practice kind of issues or psychiatric issues, and you want to call in with an online resource with personnel, then they're available to you. So go beneath the video we have here, and if that's a need that you have, they can be very helpful in a very quick and immediate kind of way. Also, make sure that you go to my website, and you'll notice on there that I have lots of resources. I have my courses that address, and they're very extensive with 25 videos each, that address issues like anger management, setting boundaries, finding who you are, pursuing the healthy way of life. I also have my webinars on a wide array of topics. They're a different kind of a presentation, 90-minute presentations with PowerPoint. We have many articles, so lots of resources there for you, along with my books, etc. Unfortunately, narcissists have decided taking responsibility doesn't work, because that ruins the image that I'm trying to maintain, and image is everything for them, as well as dominance and power. So you're probably not going to have a breakthrough with them, but I'm hoping you can have a breakthrough with yourself and say, well, I'm going to go ahead and stay on my steady course, and if they can't join me, then looks like I'm going to be -1 in my relationships. If that's the case, then do what you need to do to protect yourself, and for whatever you do, you don't have to play the role of the scapegoat.